Firstly, just by way of apology, this is an extraordinary delay that we have never had in the ANC. But it will depend on the commencement and the deliberations at the NEC. It's as though we anticipated the discussions. We now finished because it's just one day, because we do not want to keep it for a long weekend. There's another NEC that is coming midweek next week. But this was called for a specific purpose, to which the Secretary General will talk to the outcomes of that NEC. SG?
They talk to this?
You don't need that. Here are the microphones.
Where are the microphones?
Naz, yes.
Oh. Good evening, everybody. We had a special National Executive Committee today, and that special NEC was called to discuss two things only: roadmap to the 54th National Conference and the KZN court judgment. That is all. The NEC has approved the roadmap to the National Conference, taking note of the following: that the audits should be completed by August. That was the resolution in the NEC. Up to now, audits to 8 provinces have now been completed, with the Eastern Cape being the only one outstanding province. Reason for that is it has just completed its process to the provincial conference. Secondly, that on completion of the audit processes, delegations will be allocated proportionately to the various provinces, and consequently allocate delegates to branches proportionately. We allocate delegations to provinces proportionately, then provinces allocate delegations to the branches proportionately. And the branch general meetings to consolidate branch positions on policy, nomination of candidates for the elections to the NEC, and to nominate branch delegates will then commence. In other words, we are now on the verge of starting the actual BGMs, where people are nominated. So all the time we've been talking about candidate this, presidential, hopeful that. Now we are coming to the real nomination. Let me explain a little bit on the nomination. Our constitution says to be a candidate, you must be nominated by a province. That's what our constitution says. We've said we'll deal with that in the following way. We'll allow branches to nominate, put in a box, at the end of the process, open the boxes, count the nominations. If Zizi, in the unlikely event, as Zizi is nominated as a president, he receives 400 nominations, and Kusela Sangoni gets 2 nominations. It will be reflected in the report, but the official nomination of that province will be Zizi Kodwa. That's what we're going to do. But we want it to be transparent. People must see how did we come to this nomination, instead of what used to happen in the past, that you go to the PGC and vote and reorder nomination of the branches. We say no tampering with the branch nomination should happen. It should be consolidation of branch nominations. The Electoral Commission and its terms of reference, as well as nomination guidelines, have been approved by the NEC, and these will be circulated to all branches to guide the PGMs. So we have got an Electoral Commission of 15 members, all of them senior cadres of the movement, and not interested in being nominated to any position. All objections and appeals will be dealt with during the November 2017, but the NEC has directed that appeals must be submitted within 48 hours from the conclusion of a BGM for them to be entertained. So in other words, you can't wait and say after a month, you say you are appealing a BGM. There's a BGM today, you want to appeal it, do it within 48 hours. That's what we have said. And We are not going to wait until November to start. As BGMs are continuing, the appeals will be entertained and be attended to. The NEC reaffirmed the decision to advise provinces not to hold provincial and regional conferences during the last 2 months prior to the national conference, to avoid these conferences being impacted on by the national conference dynamics. Now, conferences that are long overdue, though, should not use this decision to further delay their conferences. It is only those conferences due between October and November that can be postponed and held in the first quarter of 2018. So in other words, if our provincial conference in Gauteng was due, say, in March, now you're working towards it, you can't delay it further. Continue, because that is long overdue. Your mandate is long gone. Go ahead, run your conference. But if your conference is due in October, November, December, you can delay to the first quarter of 2018 to avoid causing confusion between the national conference and the provincial conference. The NEC has full confidence in the judiciary and accepts the judgment of the full bench of the Pietermaritzburg High Court in the matter of Dube and others versus Kalala and others. In relation to the 2015 ANC Kwazulu-Natal Provincial Conference, the NEC, however, felt that there was a need for further consultation with legal counsel to gain greater clarity on the decision of the court as it deals with Rule 7.2.1 of the ANC Constitution and further engage the possibility of success in appealing the judgment. That part that we are looking at is on the correctness of 721 having taken away the powers of the NEC to decide. And our understanding is that that rule in the Constitution says 1/3 of the branches of a province should request for an early conference. Therefore, it can be they take decision. They submit a request, and the structure must take that decision to say that decision is the National Executive Committee. So in that regard, we think that we should look into how do we interpret the judgment in that regard. NEC mandated the National Working Committee to establish a strong, inclusive, unifying provincial task team, which will be tasked with preparing for the provincial conference in Kwazulu-Natal. That sounds like a contradiction. I will explain that further. And the NEC does not believe that the NEC should continue to give reasons to the court to intervene in matters of the organization, which should be managed politically by the organization. The NEC must take charge of the challenges facing the movement and deal with them decisively. Further, the NEC will place for consideration by the National Conference the amendment of Rule 7.2.1 of the NEC Constitution to ensure that its interpretation is not left to courts, but it is quite clear what we want to do with the 1/3 of the branches, and not be mechanical and at odds with its intent. These decisions were underpinned by two primary considerations, being to find a unifying solution and reasserting the authority of the ANC rather than the courts in the political management and administration of the issues confronting the ANC. We must ensure that at all times, when disputes arise within the movement, we must resolve them ourselves. The NEC was unanimous on the need to ensure that this ruling and consequent processes must represent a unifying moment for the organization and membership in KwaZulu-Natal. That is the end. These are the only two issues we dealt with. It is 7.
Yeah, it's written as 7.
Oh, did I say 7? No, it's 17.2.1. Yeah, it's not 7. It's 17. 7.
Rule 17.2.1.
Rule 7 deals with leagues. Okay. Rule 7 deal with leagues. Rule 17 deal with the province.
Deal with provinces,
Okay.
where 1/3 of the branches can request a provincial conference. That's the rule. That's it, you have a pen?
And you can see that when people write statement for me, they trap me and put 7 instead of 17. I'm giving that to Zuzi.
Thank you very much. Can you take questions? Tandabantu? No, let me start with Lehana, veterans first. Put Lehana?
Let me start first. No.
Okay. Go ahead, Tandabantu.
Just a little bit of an explanation, please, Nobala, with regards to this team that will help KZN host this conference. A, when's the conference going to take place? If you're worried about conferences taking place in November and December, to be pushed out to 2018 if there is a plan to do so. And there's absolutely no secret that the ANC is factionalized, even in the highest decision-making body between conferences, the National Executive Committee. So when you are putting together a task team to assist in this hosting of a new conference, how are you going to assure that no gerrymandering or nefarious acts take place at this conference, much in the same way as it did in 2015, resulted in the ANC being taken to court and losing in court?
So the time frames.
Time frames, and also how are you going to ensure that the people that you send to assist in the running of this conference, reconstitute a conference, play fair?
Okay.
Okay, see, you have a letter from Power.
No, who's it? 3 and then open.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, so you are from Power FM. I just want to ask now, as we speak, what is the current status of the PEC of KZN as we speak now? And I understand that the SG said those are the 2 items that the NEC discussed. But I'm asking this question within the context of the complaint that was made by Dr. Makoskoza about the PEC.
The complaint
By Dr. Makoskoza about the PEC continuing with the disciplinary action against her despite the court decision in the Pietermaritzburg High Court. So as we speak now, what is the current status of the PEC? And within the context of its ability to take decisions as an organizational structure?
You the last on this side for the SU to answer.
Okay, Natasha Pugh from ANC. SG in Komangport, I know that you said that the 2 matters that the NEC actually discussed, but the last time we had a briefing, you said that there would be a task team into the investigations of political killings in KZN. I just wanted to know what progress have you made into that?
You're talking about the commission, Morani Commission.
No,
Something
just
different.
remember the last time, I think it was two other press briefings that you had, and you said Butzbozo Varashele KZN, and you'd actually investigate, you'd set up a task team, so
Okay.
just issues around that.
Can you answer this? Yes. Tandabantu first.
When will the conference be? It will be as early as we can, but the constitution of the ANC give us a maximum of 9 months to organize a conference when a structure of the province is dissolved. So it doesn't say you must have it on the 9th month. So we want it to be accelerated and be there as early as possible. But the constitution gives the NEC a time frame of 9 months to hold a provincial conference when a peace is dissolved. How will we ensure that there is no gerrymandering in a factionalized NEC? You see, one of the things that you never allow to happen in an organization is to kill the organization because they're factions. And they will start making an assumption that there's no organization, there are only factions. There is an organization, factions are a reality that we come across in running an organization. So when we put a task team, we're going to try to have, we said, a strong, inclusive and unifying NEC. It may mean there's no test team in place yet. It may mean going out of your way, taking people who are totally in disagreement, put them in the test team so that they must sort out those agreements in the process. Status of the PSC, I will answer that question, but the reason for you asking it is a wrong reason. Okay. Let me tell you why it's the wrong reason. It's because, yeah?
It's because of what Marcos
Yes, because Makosa can't be an authority over the structures of the ANC. So you're asking the question, but for wrong reasons. But let me tell you, the reason that we're given 3 days to get the senior counsel opinion is because within 3 days we must appreciate whether this decision is appealable or not. But for all intents and purposes, then the PEC is going to be dissolved. That's why we talk of a test team. Because once you dissolve the PEC, you have a test team. You can't have a test team on top of a PEC. But there is urgency on the part of the ANC, one, to go to a conference as soon as possible. Have a PEC that is legitimate in place. Two, you ensure that that process is overseen by a team that is seen not to be biased or try to pull the various interests together. Okay. You. There's one question I must answer.
Natasha.
Yes, I was asking, but as we speak now, is the PC empowered to take decisions, including its pushing of this?
No, the reason that we say 3 days, we must get the senior council opinion. The reason that we say 2 to 3 days is because there's a weekend and a holiday on Monday. So we must complete that work now. Okay.
So over the weekend, is it still in place?
To take, I wonder what decision will be taken over the weekend.
There won't be any.
That PEC knows that it is under discussion or single legal opinion. So it's not a question of declaring it dead or alive. There is a judgment. I think you must listen to what we say. We accept the judgment. Okay, we accept the judgment. Therefore, the judgment is accepted that is said the outcome of that conference is unlawful and void. Okay, it's unlawful and void. We accept that, but as we accept it, which means that it is a voidable structure that came out of that conference, because it is not only the conferences and its decisions, but want to check with the senior council whether the interpretation of that clause is correct. If we are appealing that decision, the status of the PEC may change. You want clarity on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
No, Iman.
Wait, I'm coming to you.
Iman.
I'm not coming to you.
Otherwise, I must have a bit, kind of, if you want to all sing. The reason for that is, if a decision is appealed, one, the status quo remains. Number two, if you are appealing with the intention of getting a declaratory order, you can execute the court judgment. Okay. The last one, testimony on political killings. I don't know this testimony on political killings. There is the Morana Commission.
We sent the comrades about Jeff and others, then remember, to the province.
Oh. No, but there's a commission.
Yeah.
So we can't have an ANC investigation. Ours will be a political investigation and discussion. But killing will continue, because my emphasis in all the conferences is that political killings are criminal. They are not political. To call them political killings is to give them a nice title. Killing a human being is criminal. Therefore, institution of state must deal with killings mercilessly.
Juanita?
Thank you very much.
You are too much in a hurry, Juanita, but continue.
SG, I just want to find out two things. A, why was the need to not consider the senior council opinion before the NEC sat? Was it not something that was undertaken after the officials met last week with the ANC. That's number one. Number two is that effectively in 3 days, it's a matter of clarity. Will the PEC led by Sishla Ziklala know in 3 days whether they disbanded or not? Is that it? So is the matter of being disbanded at a PTT deferred just as a matter of clarity?
You said 3 matters? I
So-
got it to you. You said 3 matters?
Okay, and the third one is, did the NEC at all discuss how this matter would impact on the national conference, if at all? Thank you.
Okay. Now back to Putilihana.
No, my question is asked.
No, no,
So
no.
I wanted to find out if this decision was going to impact on the national conference.
Oh, no, it's the same question. Thanks, Putilihana. Who's behind you? Thank you.
Yes. No, but I just need clarity. You just mentioned that if there's a declaratory order, then the PEC remains. Can you just clarify that point? Okay.
That was the last question, question. Because Juanita asked all 3 questions covered this side. Thank you.
Let me start with this one. We are saying, if you are appeal, straightforward appeal, a straightforward appeal includes stay of execution. Okay? There's an appeal, therefore you wait for that process, and therefore there is a stay of execution. But if you want a declaratory order, you can execute the order, but still want clarity from court, for the court to give clarity on the decision that you want clarity on. Because the biggest worry about this judgment is not the judgment itself, is the emphasis on the 1/3 and the interpretation of that 1/3, whether it takes away the right of the NEC to take decisions. That is the difference. I hope I'm clear. Yeah. But if we were, after consulting the senior counsels, the decision that we should appeal. 15 days is ending this week, early this week. Once that appeal is submitted, there is stay of execution. But if we want a declaratory order, we may dissolve the PEC, put a PTT, continue with the, but go to court for clarification of the interpretation of the order.
Of Rule 17.2.1.
Yes, that is where the difference is. Because though we respect the decision of the court, we're also very wary of allowing court decisions to actually create a situation where the ANC as an organization becomes flat-footed in doing its work. And we refer to the Ramakatsa case, where the Constitutional Court made a point that says they are disinclined to run the affairs of the ANC. Okay. Juanita was why the opinion was not sought before. You see, Juanita, let me give you just basics of running an organization. Not an institution. That's the big difference. When you run an organization, you go through various stages. One, you must go through your structures, talk to your structures. Two, don't run ahead of yourself. And the NEC, for example, when we went to the NEC, we put 3 options. Say, look into these options, you see. And once the NEC has looked into those options, give us feedback, then a line of action is given. That's how it works normally. Because sometimes if you run ahead of yourself, you get surprised when you are actually bound both feet. Okay, you fall on your belly. Will the PEC know if it is dissolved? The PEC will know because the NEC said officials and NWC finalize this matter, but there is also an NEC next week. But that request, the status of that will also be reported to the NEC next week. But the NEC has said, deal with this issue, finalize it, close it, come and report to the NEC next week. So if a decision is taken, it will know even before that NEC. Lastly, how will this impact on the national conference? I've been asked this question many times. And I always say this narrative that the conference may collapse and so forth is too strong a narrative, and I don't know what informs it. The conference is a conference of branch delegates, okay? At least 90% of delegates to a conference is branch delegates, okay? It's not provincial delegates, it's branch delegates. Number two, the NEC goes there in its full entirety as ex officio and voting delegates. PCs are allocated space in the National Executive. So if it impacts on the delegation to the NEC, it may impact only to the limit, to the point that it may impact on the PEC of KZN. Otherwise, the conference will not be impacted by this decision. Say, then we can't run a conference because there is a judgment on KZN. It's the same as the Ramakasa case. Actually, we were given a judgment on the eve of the conference. All we did was to stop the PEC of the Free State. The conference went ahead smoothly and well.
But Lihana?
To what extent do you think greed and materialism contributes to the killings in KZN rather than focusing on the service to the people?
In other words, what is the motive?
Yeah.
But Lihana was the last question for the night. Clemens, no, I know you're going to come back.
No, I'm fine.
Not today.
I want to go home.
Wow, what a long weekend.
Okay. No. Our view is that the Morena Commission will give us more information on that issue and clarity. But greed and materialism complicates politics in general. Greed and materialism complicates politics in general. I always tell people when they say the answer is not the same, I always say if it was the same as in 1980, it would be a sick organization. At that time, it was working under conditions of illegality. Discipline was part of safety and security. Now it is open, everybody is having access to resources. And therefore, greed and materialism complicates politics. And that is a well-researched subject of how, when liberation movement ascends to power and get exposure to resources, how that complicates their space. But I can't limit it to the killings in KZN.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for your time. Have a safe weekend.